Ẹ mà lẹ níbẹ̀ yẹn ò nílé lóko. Ẹ sì kú dédé àsìkò yìí. Hello everyone, it's Adirunke again. I hope your day is going well. I'm sorry I could not appear in the previous video. My software is still down, but this is the new workaround. Record the videos separately from the app and then attach it to the slides. So that's what I'm trying out now, because I don't know when we're going to get a system update for that. And I apologize for the inconvenience. I always like to use the pointers and all, but I suppose I'm unable to use them today. I apologize for not being in that video. I was supposed to remake it, but then I thought it's not going to be as detailed. The remake wouldn't be as detailed. I would have to go back and try to remember the things that I said and some of the points that came out of the blue that I was able to mention. So I encourage you to watch it. If you find it hard to watch just because you can't see a video of me in it, I encourage you to perhaps increase the speed or do something else in the background while you listen to me. I try to insert different pictures of myself, but it can't be compared to seeing me speak, in real time. Today, I'd like to talk about the word Egúngún, and what it really means. It's often wrongly translated as masquerade, but it's not masquerade. If you know what masquerade is, then you would know that it can't possibly be masquerade. A masquerade is a false show or pretense, the wearing of disguise, a masked ball. This is a masquerade. This is what a masquerade looks like. This is not it at all. This is not a masquerade. You can't liken one to the other. No. Apart from Egúngún, you may also see Egun. It's the same thing. Egun. It's the same thing. It's just a strong version of that word. Sometimes we like to shrink words or combine them or, different things. But Egun is the strong version. Egun is like the oft version. And it tells you something, but it doesn't really tell you the full thing like Egúngún does, and I'll explain soon. But it's the oft version. So if you see Egun, it's still referring to the same thing. If it's written this way anyway, because it could be Egun, it could be different with different tone marks. You may see different things, but if it appears like this, then it's in relation to the Egungun. I was doing a bit of research into how masquerade even came into the picture, how the likening to masquerades and shows and role playing and all that, how that came to be. And I always like to go to this Ajayi Crowder inspired dictionary that was written in the early 1900s, because it is so bad that it is so good. you just can't look away. And also it's always interesting to see like where certain things may have started, and how these things came into the academic institutions and how people owe these false definitions to be true. Several years after, several decades after, they defined it as a masquerader who is supposed to be a dirt person returned to earth, and then the worship of spirits of the dead. It's not very objective at all. If you look at even certain Isheshe related definitions, I posted one recently on my Instagram about how Elegua was defined, and it seems like this dictionary is very desperate on telling you how to feel about certain things. Even before you get to know what they really are. It's so accessible. If you Google Yoruba dictionary PDF, you will get it. But it is so bad. So accessible, but so bad. The condescending tone is hard to ignore. A masquerader who is supposed to be a dead person returned to earth, the worship of spirits of the dead, it just doesn't quite do it as far as definition is concerned. But I'll try to define it, but even I cannot total what it is. It's a very deep aspect of our culture, but I'll try. I also saw this when I was making my slides. I was just shopping around and trying to assess what is out there as far as accuracy is concerned, and I came across this. Egún is the collective representation of the ancestors. We often call our ancestors by the name Egún, which in the Yoruba language means bones. I immediately screamed, that is not correct. I like the website because of how they try to preserve certain things, but there are lots of wrong notes on there that, I just wish that certain adjustments can be made, because I know it would be visited quite frequently. It comes up quickly in search results, but you cannot say that it's not the same. We have Egungun is the word for bones. See, Egungun is what it's called. Egun is the strong version of the same word. Egungun is bone, or egun if you shrink the word. Egungun is different. Egun or egun if you just off the word. Those are different from egungun. So while there's a really nice definition after, and there's a there's a real stretch, like the base information is incorrect, and they went on to explain even further with that wrong definition. It's not correct. As we walk upon the earth, our feet press against the bones of our ancestors on whose shoulders we stand. That is quite true, but it has nothing to do with the word Egungun. Egungun is Egungun. It has nothing much to do with Egungun. Before I talk about it even further, I have to say Egunguns serve different functions. Sometimes you can liken certain Egunguns to spirituality. So they relate to spirituality. At other times, what they do is entertainment and amusement related. Many times, it is both. And I think this is where the costume versus regalia discussion or thought comes into place. When it's for entertainment or amusement, you can always even tell by how they are trying to make you laugh and everything. I suppose you can call the outfits costumes, but when it relates to spirituality, it just doesn't sit right. It's really goofy to call it a costume at that point, or a masquerade, or I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around it. You can't call it costume at that point anyway. Then it becomes a regalia. And I'll tell you why. In relation to spirituality, you can call an Egungun a well-prepared spirit medium who dresses in a specially designed and carefully readied regalia on set days, committing their body to be used by a spirit or specific spirits alternately to enable the spirit's physical presence, instead of just communicating via drums. signs, dreams, or divination, that spirit is now able to speak, and in doing so, they can admonish, pray, warn, encourage, sing, and even tell jokes. They can walk, they can run, they can dance, and they can show affection. So if you have a very rough, it doesn't even have to be, if you have the slightest idea about spirit mediumship, and if you understand what it is, then you are one step towards understanding what Egúngún is and what purpose it serves as far as spirituality is concerned. It's when you're able to give a spirit a body again, so that they can do certain things with it for a certain period of time within that day. It's very deep, it's very crucial, and it's very powerful. I know that there's a lot of abuse of it now, and as far as ethics is concerned, sometimes, but it's very deep, very spiritual, and because people don't really understand it, doesn't make it any less of what it is. As a matter of fact, I don't think any real Oje family I think it's just people just latching onto it and wanting to do it, I guess, for entertainment. And I think this is where some people cross the line as far as ethics is concerned. The people who may ask for money, and all that. In the past, I don't think they used to really ask you for money. You sort of gave them out of your own free will. This was one of the most important and the first few real sources of Yoruba entertainment, or even play, drama, in present day Nigeria, Yoruba land. So anyway, in this case, when it's entertainment related, you can call that Egúngún, a performer who wears a costume to entertain or excite by playing, dancing, performing tricks, and more. As a result, they make people a lot happier, and in many cases, heal people from bouts of sadness and depression. So that is the role that they serve. They don't necessarily always represent a departed soul. Sometimes they do. It is the departed soul serving a spiritual function and also entertaining and making everybody feel better. But not always. Sometimes it is combined, and that is why I said both earlier. Sometimes you find both. About what I was saying regarding ethics, people just, even before we had the current system that we use as far as money is concerned, people would give them clothes, people would give them gifts of food, and people would give them yams and out of their own free will, just because they felt entertained. Now it's just a bunch of people not performing, I suppose, just demanding, I guess, if my low or whatever, especially if they see you in a big car. There's a lot. I think people don't understand it. They just say it as masquerade. Thank you, Ajayi Crowder. Thank you. They just say it as a masquerade, and so they don't really understand it. But if you really know what it is and the purpose that it serves, then if you are in the position to perform, then you will know what you're doing. TVs, radios, other forms of entertainment have definitely affected the Egungun performances that are dedicated to entertainment. People don't rate them as much, and people whose lineages have always done this, like, okay, is what their great grandfather did, is what their great grandfather did, was what their grandfather did, are definitely being affected. You know, it's just not as lucrative anymore. And so I suppose that is why sometimes they're a little bit more vocal about the give us money, you know, whenever they are performing. Many times they don't even perform. It's just not as entertaining too. It's just people wearing the costume and trying to, you know. So as far as ethics is concerned, people need to be careful with it. But yeah, this form of entertainment has predated cell phones and movies and songs. No, not songs, but like music videos and cartoons. This was one of the first kinds of play that we have as far as performances is concerned. Understanding what the word Egúngún means in and of itself and why it cannot be likened to bone. Egúngún or Egun. Egúngún is different from Egun or Egúngún. You have to understand what Egúngún is, you have to understand what gun is. And with the homonymal tendencies of the word. So in one context, it could relate to the verbs pierce, pound, thrust, stab, or beat. Mo fẹ́ gún iyán, I want to pound yam. Má gún mi lọ́bẹ, don't stab me with a knife. Mo fẹ́ fi gún, I want to pierce it, you know, gún. Sometimes it is arrive or land. So that's another prayer that I have to note. I think I mentioned it in the Ogun video as well. This verb is also in the in the word Ogun. It can also be arrive or land. So when you arrive somewhere, say ati gunle, you know, we've arrived. Sometimes it's land as well. Ati gunle. If you add ile, in another context you may not have to. Many times you'd have to add ile, which is the ground, the base. So that suggests that you've touched down, you've arrived, you know. In another case, it could also be to align or put in order. So once you understand the homonymal tendencies of the word and the fact that it can't just be, you can't just say, oh, Egungun, oh, similar letters, different tone marks anyway, but similar letters, same thing. One can pass for the other. No, that's not really how it works. Egungun, in the word Egungun is the one who or the ones who. So that is the noun maker. I told you that sometimes vowels are placed in front of verbs. Many times, all the time actually. Vowels are placed in front of verbs with differing tone marks depending on what the kind of noun is, you know, with differing tone marks. Sometimes it would be do, sometimes it would be re, there's no tone mark on it, so the one who or the ones who. The first gun there is arrive. The other is to align or put in order. So if you put these words together, the ones who arrive, to align or put in order. The ones who arrive, to align or put in order. So they arrive from, in the spirituality related sense, I suppose they arrive from the spirit world to put things in order, to align things, to, especially if they're coming to warn or instruct, or a lot of that used to occur in the past, sometimes even to fight. You will be quite surprised. even before they arrive, the regalias are always tend to be ready for the spirit medium. So there were reports of those regalias breathing. You just looks like the regalia, the Eku is breathing. You hear those sounds from that regalia. You may hear things like that, or even certain sounds from around that regalia or from the regalia itself. So you know that it's no longer just, certain things attached together, certain fabrics attached together. It has now become something else. So there were reports that sometimes those regalias would even warn, even without the medium, a physical medium, they would even warn. They would make certain sounds, or they would, but more effectively when they had a body to use. The communication that they would make, apart from the sounds and all that, would be, because those spirits don't have a voice box anymore. So it would be sort of like with sounds, manipulation of sounds, but it's more effective when there's a medium wearing the regalia. Sometimes they can fight with the person's body. Sometimes they can admonish. Sometimes they can scold. Like, why are you doing? So it just relates to the aligning and putting in order aspect of their function. They arrive to align, to put in order. Even the ones that are designed for entertainment, at the end of the day, are not so far off, because making people happier and brightening their day, and sometimes even doing a bit of, it won't necessarily be the ancestors directly all the time. Sometimes it would be, and that was why I included both earlier, but it would just be like to encourage, oh, don't be sad. They would perform and all that. It's a very good part of our culture. And to just make that small by saying masquerade is really disappointing. To align or put in order, cut it into half. Egúngún will just be the one who arrives, or the ones who arrive. You're insinuating spirits, of course, just because you know what the person is referring to. But just offing it like that doesn't really do justice to everything. So I personally like to say Egun, Egúngún, than Egun. The ones who arrive to do what? It's not really implied automatically, except you already know what Egúngún is. So I suppose now is time for a few to ask me, if masquerade is inaccurate, what English word applies then? What if we can't say masquerade, then what can we say? And I don't know, what do you say when you call for sushi? What English word do you use when you ask for sushi? And what English word do you use when you call to order pizza? And what English word do you call shawarma? And what English word do you call kebab? If these are just foods, I'm just trying to use the most ridiculous of things now to drive my point. You can't even compare it. These are just foods. But if you're fine without calling them English names, and the world hasn't turned upside down, then you're fine. If you call Egúngún, Egungun, it doesn't have to have an English name. You can survive without an English name. So you can remove the masquerade and leave it to be what it is. Of course, there's a definition, and you can't just say all of this. It's a mouthful. But just leave it as what it is. If you then need to explain it further, I suppose you can do that for whoever needs to know. I think the need to always translate things to English is, even I I'm not perfect. Because I'm doing these videos doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes or anything. I just don't I just don't want to be seen in that light as, oh, not, because sometimes I also make mistakes and then the ancestors just sit me back like, excuse me, you're supposed to know better. You know what you're here for. You can't say that. So yeah, so I'm not perfect. You know, even with these things, I do make mistakes sometimes. And I've once or twice called akara bean cakes. They would have been fine if I just called them akara, because that's the name of the meal. But I've said bean cakes and and something pottage, and in order to just make it a bit more, I suppose, relatable with the non-Yoruba people that I've spoken with, I've done that as well. And you find that with colonization and the kind of world that we live in, you just can't avoid it. But these things are fine without English names. We're no longer... I'm still going to make the video on decolonizing the Yoruba language, because the language has been colonized severely. And I think that would be like me fulfilling one part of what I'm supposed to be doing with this. One part of the assignment is really going into detail about, look, it's not quite what it used to be. I will make that video as soon as my software comes back up. I have to start preparing the slides for it. Anyway, that's that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye for now.